Our speaker today is continuing our series of talks on the 4 types of love. Chino was consecrated into the Order of Virgins in 2009. Ooh, oh, 9. And she's the founder of Sacred Print, which seeks to evangelize through art and beauty. She'll be speaking today on the keys to loving your friends and family. Now introducing Chino!
Here? Never know. Get my microphone. Sorry. Awesome. Great. Thank you, guys. This is actually really cool. Thank you for being with you. Actually allowing me to be with you. It's good to have at least a few people here. They can laugh at my jokes, Good practice. All right, so this is awesome. Thank you for inviting me on the talks of the 4 types of love. And so today, you may have heard of Philia, but I'm sure you probably have never heard of Storge, right? Which is family type love. But we're going to talk a little bit about everything. So here's the thing. If you've ever heard, like, what is love, right? There's even songs like, what is love? Yeah, everybody rocks out, baby, don't hurt me, which is like, don't hurt me, what is love? So it's like hurt, love, pain go together. Or if you're like me, I have to take this out of my vocabulary. But I'll say, oh my gosh, Nicole, I love your shoes. Like, Pedro, now everybody is about masks, right? Like, oh my gosh, I love your mask. Like, it's so cute. So we use the word love to mean anything. Like, I love the dog, I love this, I love that. And the word just gets completely used. You see, in Spanish, we actually have 2 types of words. We say amar, amor, o querer. So if you like a person, you can say, te quiero mucho. It's so sweet, it's so great. But when you love somebody, you say, te amo, right? You wouldn't tell some random person, like, te amo. It's like too intense. And you see, it is. And then the Greeks, they had 4 types of love. And so today, we're actually going to talk about 2. I know that you guys have been talking a little bit more. So we know eros, which is that erotic love and all that great stuff. We also have storge, which is that family love, the natural love of a mother for a son, the father for a daughter, all of that beautiful things, right? Which we're going to talk about today. We also have philia, which is that beautiful love of friendship, which we're even going to do kind of like an examination of conscience to kind of figure out, like, am I a good friend? Do I actually really love? And then agape love, which is that the last one that you guys are going to talk about? Or if you've already talked about it, it is amazing, right? Which is that Christ-like self-sacrificial love, okay? So let's talk a little bit about that storge love. So this is a love that's a natural attraction and natural affinity that you already have because you're born within a family. And so just by being born within a family, in theory, we'll talk about that, right? There is this natural affection that you have for your family members and for your kin. Now, it's easy to take it for granted. I know that I do this all the time, unfortunately, with my sisters. I can be mad at them. Don't do this. But sometimes I don't even ask forgiveness. I'm like, whatever, she's my sister. She has to forgive me. That's fine. Well, no, right? It's not that way. So we're going to take a look at this about it's true that we have this natural love of family, affinity, attraction, affection. But what happens when that's not there? Right? And so first of all, let's just define terms again, and let's remember that love really is to desire the ultimate good of the other person. And so let's take a look at that a little bit more deeply. So we said that storge love is that love of family, but that love of family is also sacrificial. One of my really good friends just had a baby. And I love her to death. She's very cute and very funny, but she's like, Miss, I don't like pain. I don't like anything. So when she got pregnant, I was like, this girl is going to, I don't know what she's going to do to give birth. Like, she's going to pass out and die. Because anything, like paper cut, is like, oh, drama, right? So I was like, how is she going to do it? You know, I was like, the Lord, the grace, I don't know. So anyway, long story short, she was amazing. Like, she had 24-hour labors, like 6 hours of just pushing. It was intense. Like, intense what she went through. But seeing her being so strong, right, that natural mother instinct that came once she actually saw her son, it was like fierce. It was intense, and it was so beautiful to see that that was there. So it's not just, as we know, love is not just based on emotion. Because think about this. You know, if love is just an emotion, which is what most people say, it's just a feeling, and so I know I'm in love because they walked in the room and like, ooh, love. Well, no, love is actually an act of the will, right? It is a choice. And so even though the feelings are not there, you still choose the good of the other. So imagine her. Do you think at 2 in the morning when her little son is crying and screaming, she's like, oh, joy, I've slept an hour, I'm so excited, I get to breastfeed you. Yes, like, no, there's no way. And then she gets to sleep again. She was telling me that it takes an hour to feed him, between feeding and all that. Then she goes back to sleep, and then when 2 hours, she wakes up again, and she's like, yay! Like, no. So there is a greater depth. Yes, there is that natural affinity of mother and son, right? But this stronger love needs to come in to build that up even more. We can't just stay where that's at. Think about a young person who's taking care of their aging parents. Think about siblings. So I have older sisters, and they were like super popular, and everybody loved me because of them. And it was funny because my sisters, like, if anybody would even think of bullying me or saying something, like my sister, she would come up and she's like, excuse me, you mess with her, you mess with me, right? So it's like this natural love of like protective and all that stuff. And that is great when you have an amazing family. Like you see St. Therese, she would say that she would just see her dad praying, and she's like, I knew what the saints prayed like. Like, wow, that's amazing. And some of us, you know, maybe dad isn't at home like he never was, or maybe you have a really toxic sibling or an uncle who's a nightmare, you know, and you're like, Gina, this sounds great, but that natural affinity and affection, like, no, Thanksgiving is a nightmare in my house. Like, what do we do, right? Well, here we come again. Here comes this love is an act of the will, not just a choice. So I may not choose my feelings, but I could totally choose my actions. So I can choose to be forgiving. I can choose an act of service. And if that's too much, if you're like, actually, I can't even choose that because it's too much. Sometimes part of loving is creating those boundaries, right? So if this person is toxic and they're doing things to you and all that stuff, well, part of loving is not only protecting yourself, but also helping them. Like, it's not good for them to be sinning against you, right? So even having those boundaries could be an act of love as well. And so, as we said, it is an act of the will, though. And sometimes it may be so hard, right, to even have that act of the will. And you can say, well, Lord, share with me that love that you have for them. And just remember, like, have eyes of mercy. I've always noticed that hurt people hurt others. And so I've seen within my family, within a lot of families, that if you come from a broken family, or if you had an abusive dad, or if your dad had an abusive dad, those things kind of repeat themselves. And so it's not an excuse, right? But sometimes you can understand a person's actions through the brokenness that they came from. So asking God for those eyes of mercy to say, like, Lord, I don't feel this natural Storge love that I'm supposed to have, like, help me. But then having those eyes of mercy helps you see, okay, this is a broken person, and I may encounter them in their brokenness, like I said, maybe with boundaries, things like that, but I still can encounter them there as well. And what does the Bible say, right, about this natural family love, like this Storge love? Well, just think about the Bible for a moment. How awesome is God that he not only calls Abraham a single man, right, but he calls his family. And then from that family, a tribe. And then from a tribe, a nation, and later the church. So family is incredibly important in the Bible. As we see, just even in Genesis, there's 3 genealogies. We have Cain, we have Seth, we have Noah. We see later in Matthew and Luke, the genealogy of Jesus. Family and belonging is important, is very important. I think about genealogies. My dad, I love him. He's a nerd like me. And so he loves genealogy. And so it's kind of creepy, all the stuff that you can find on the internet. But for my dad's birthday, it was like genealogy.net. And so we were able to go back to all the way like 17 something, right, to see these family members. And I love it. Like, do you see these people look like my dad with like these major mustaches and all these like crazy things? And I've never met these people, but because of Storge, that natural affinity of love, I'm like, these people are my family. Like, I have the responsibility even now to pray for them. And so I found out, it's actually quite cool, that on my mom's side, my grandfather's cousins with Carolina Herrera, the designer, and I'm like, send me a dress, like do something. But yeah, so it's actually really cool. Like, they're cousins, and then I didn't know. I had a great aunt who was a nun, and just like all these great things. And so genealogy is not only in the Bible, but in our life, the sense of belonging to a family is important. And then I was also thinking of, I know a family who's amazing. Maybe some of you have met them. They know, like, they don't care that I share this story, but they're the Tessier family. And so Carol is an amazing person. I say this to her face, so it's great. But she's one of those people that just like smiles and like radiates. It's incredible. And she's adopted, and she also always talks about like how much she loves her parents, right? Not only her birth parents, but her parents who raised her and all that beautiful stuff. But a few years back, she did this genealogy thing too. And she actually got a perfect match, and she actually found her mom. And so how incredible with this young girl who had a beautiful family where she was adopted into, but then meeting her birth mother. And then how just even that healing within her family, she was able to connect her birth mother later, because her birth mother was going to have an abortion, but then she didn't. And it was just amazing to see how her life has affected everybody else. And then how later, not only her birth mother, but she found her father, and just like our birth father, and all these incredible things. And what was incredible was she asked me to take photography of that, like of her mom and her. They're twins. I mean, they look exactly the same. And so how wonderful that even from this brokenness, what started as brokenness, just how this familial Storge love really can heal even within broken families. So it's actually a beautiful thing. And just final note about this love also is that, remember, God reveals himself as Father, right? So he could have been Master, and you know what? That's fantastic. That's a great name for God. Like yes, he's our creator, all those things. But when he reveals himself in familial relationships, right? God is Father who has a son. He gives us on the cross his mother. So we belong. I don't know what your family situation is like, right? But I do know you are loved by your Father. You have an amazing mother who loves you, and Mary, right? And you have Jesus who loves you so much. And so, maybe like John Paul II, when his mother died, his dad took him to a shrine and he just showed Mary. He's like, she is your mother now. So we're not orphans. No matter what our family situations, we are not orphans. And so the need to belong, God has given it to us in our families. Not only that, but also in the family, great family, which is the church. Now, Philia love. This is, I call it the lost art of Philia, of friendship, because I really do think it's a crisis, as we're going to see, because I don't think we understand what friendship is. So here's the thing. I'm the first one. I'm old, okay, so I still have Facebook. That's fine. People like Facebook, please. But I have like these art, and I was actually just talking right now that I have these art, and I post them on Facebook, and then people are like, ooh, yeah, whatever. But in Facebook, I have over 1,000 friends. Really? Really, I have 1,000 friends. I have 1,000 people that I like pop in and check out what's going on in their life, right? I have maybe 1,000 people that I kind of like pop in or compare myself with or criticize. I shouldn't, all these things. But friends, not really. So we call anything friends. So let's recapture. I told you I'm a nerd, right? So let me nerd out for a second. Let me give you a lesson on nerding. So here's the thing. History lesson. Let's start with Aristotle. Okay, brilliant man. He talked about 3 levels of friendship. And so the first is friendship, what he calls based on utility, where both people derive some benefit from each other. Okay? Now, again, it's that utility. So sad but true, in Venezuela, not Minnesota. People, when I say Venezuela, they think I say Minnesota. In South America, Venezuela, I don't know why, I had a friend, and she was the smartest girl in my class. So, of course, she was my friend. She was my friend during midterms, right? And then the rest of the time, she wasn't, much my friend. And it was definitely based on utility. Like, she was very smart. She could teach me things better than anybody else could. So it was sad. I mean, she was nice. I don't think I was conscious that I was, like, using her or whatever. But, yeah, it was definitely based on utility. So that's level 1 of friendship. It's not really, like, authentic friendship. 2 is friendship based on pleasure, where both people are drawn to each other's wit, good looks, sexual desire, whatever, but it's just based on pleasure. And so it's a little bit of utility, but it's also pleasure. It doesn't have to be only like sexual, but it can be, oh, this person is a great musician, this person is a great artist, so we share pleasure together. And so especially when we get later to the sexual realm, we can think, oh no, that's love. We're both consenting, so it's love. But no, like mutual use doesn't make love, right? And so what we begin to understand then is that a friendship based on utility and a friendship based on pleasure can't really be lasting, okay? Bad people can have those types of friendship. Bad people can have friendship based on utility or friendships based on pleasure. And so that's not what authentic friendship is. Notice, we're not even talking about you moralists, Catholics, Christians. No, this is Aristotle, okay, who's saying this. Look how beautiful how he defines true authentic friendship. I'm going to read it. He says, the third is a friendship based on goodness. And he says this, goodness is where both people admire each other's goodness and help one another to strive for that goodness. And he says that this is the highest form of friendship. So it's not based on utility. It's not based on pleasure, because those things can leave, but it's based on the other. It's based on goodness, which just makes total sense, because remember, this is a type of love, and love is to want the good of the other. And so this friendship based on goodness is the highest form of friendship. And so he says something that's really interesting. He says this kind of friendship He says it's only possible between good people that are similar in virtue, right? So like when you're similar in virtue, when you're striving for virtue, that's when this authentic friendship could actually happen. Because if not, there's always going to be that need to like use or that temptation for pleasure. But if it's based on virtue, it's based on goodness, then you have a really excellent friend. And then the other thing is Aristotle says, again, it's that reciprocal goodwill. So I want what is best for you. You want what is best for me. You know what's hard? What's really hard to tell your friend, hey, I love you. And because I love you, this person is not good for you, or this action is not good for you. Or the opposite, for somebody to say that, if they don't say that, then that's a problem, right? Because they don't care enough for you to actually speak truth to you in love, right? In love, but to be able to do that. Now, here's interesting. It's just almost like an examination of conscience, and to say, let me be serious. Like even a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship is also based on friendship. So you have to ask yourself, if I am honest, is my relationship, is my friendship, is it based on utility? Is it based on pleasure? If we stop doing X, Y, and Z, would this person still love me? Would I still love this person? Would that friendship still exist? Right? And so you begin to see, okay, is it based on goodness? Is it based on use? Is it based on pleasure? And then almost like an examination of conscience to say, okay, God, help me with this, right? So that's Aristotle. Very quickly, let's talk about Augustine. He's the one that really begins to give like a theology to the form of friendship. And he's incredible. He said in his years of adolescence, it was very much just like this self-seeking type of love. So his friends, he needed them because he wanted to fit in, right? He wanted to have a group, which is normal, right? But he wanted to have this group where he could fit in. And so if you ever read his confessions, you could see all the crazy stuff that they did. And so they were friends, they were together, and he even would say, because they were all boasting about all the horrible stuff that he did. He's like, yeah, and I did this, and yeah, and I did that. And like, no, he didn't. But he was like, I need to brag about bad stuff so that I could still, what? Right? And so he could understand that it was an immature love, that it wasn't really authentic friendship. And then he talks about young adult, like his young adult friendship once he grew out of that state of childishness, which is really, again, based on love. So where he could really see, he had this awesome friend, Alypius, that really was with him throughout his conversion. They both became priests. They both became bishops. And their friendship, their mutual love for each other. See, here's the thing. They loved each other, helped each other become a better person, but they were looking in the same direction, which I think is an important part of friendship. You can have a lot of friends who, maybe have different views, different values, different opinions. That's fine. But authentic, good, real, healthy friendships also are with those who you're looking in the same direction. You're striving for the good. I remember a girl saying one time that the way that also your friends, is like you're running towards God, and then you just look left and you look right and you see who's running with me, right? Not who am I dragging, that might be necessary, right? But who's running with me? Who am I there with? And also Augustine sees that this is a grace, like authentic friendship is a grace of God. Very quickly, let's just talk about Aquinas just very quickly. And he says this. He says that in order for friendship to be real, there has to be benevolence, like that goodwill for you, not just concupiscence, like I want something from you. And he says this is weird. When I read it, I was like, did I read that right? And I went back. He said, you can even be friends with your enemy. And I'm like, no, Thomas, you're smart, but you missed this one. No, but here's the thing, because he says, God calls us to love our enemy. Obviously, we don't mean like, oh, he's so cute, the guy who like cheated on me. No, okay, we're not talking about like, effective type stuff, but like love is to will the good of the other. So you can actually desire the good, which is want heaven for that person, right? You can desire that for an enemy, and we see that with Maria Goretti, right? We see how at the last moment of her death, she literally not only forgave, which I'm like, that must have been miraculous. It was. Not only forgave the guy who stabbed her 14 times, but even said this, like, I wish for him to be with me in heaven. I'd be like, I forgive you, and if you make it to heaven, you better be on the other corner, the other extreme, or I never see you in my life, right? And so that's not what it is. It's desire the good for them. So I could understand love your enemy. I can get it. It's like, I want what's best for you. Just don't talk to me. But Aquinas talks about, no, you can actually be friends with your enemy. And I'm like, wait. But what he says is this. I like it. He says, this is, wait, where is it? Okay. I guess he gives this kind of description, like, have you ever had a good friend that talks about their friend that you don't know? And when you meet, you're like, oh my gosh, like I love you already, right? Because if you're a friend of my friend, you're my friend. And so he says, well, that could even happen with love of enemies. And so he's kind of bringing us to even higher level, right, than maybe Aristotle or Augustine were. And he said, this person, your enemy, is loved by God, right? So no matter what they did, they're loved by God. And if God loves them and I'm in God, there's a part of me that can love them too. Doesn't mean you're like, enemy, come with me, right? Like, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean like there is a higher level that we can go to. Aquinas is brilliant. Finally, I just want to end with C.S. Lewis. Love him. And one of the things he says, only our species, like we don't really need friendship to survive, like to procreate, to do all these things. So like friendship is a higher love. But I love what he says. I want to talk about this for a second. He says true friendships, like friendship between in the Bible, like David and Jonathan, are almost a lost art. He expresses a strong distaste. It says, modern society doesn't really promote this. So you look in the Bible and you see that friendship between David and Jonathan, or you see these great things, and it's hard to look back, or you read how Augustine talks about his friend. And it's interesting, I was having this discussion with somebody else, and we tend to eroticize friendship. And so now two people can't be friends, whether it's same sex or opposite sex or whatever, two people can't be friends, because now the culture and everybody says, if you love a person, if you get excited when you see them, if they make you feel good, if you just want to know about them, guess what? That's erotic love. And so therefore, that friendship really is more. And so we eroticize it, and when we make it all this sexual thing, it completely distorts it, and it ruins it, and it causes so much grief. So it's interesting. I was trying to think of a movie that showed real, good, authentic friendship. And I think there was a movie, I don't even know how long ago it was, like Bella, and it was beautiful, just to see this male and female relationship, how he's able to help her through a situation, but not overtake it, right? Not overtake, and he's then, oh my gosh, and I helped you, now we're together and in love. Like, no, we can be friends and you can help me, and that's good, And so we need to learn that friendship. We need to learn that beautiful art. And when we begin to see that, we could understand why the Bible talks about friendship in such amazing ways, right? So let's talk about this. In Sirach, it says this: a faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. He that has found one has found a treasure. There's nothing so precious as a faithful friend, and no scales can measure his excellence. A faithful friend is an elixir of life, and those who fear the Lord will find him. So if you have a really, really good friend that's based on virtue, that's based on helping you get to heaven, that's based on making you a better person, thank God. That is a grace, as Augustine says, right? You have found a treasure. Do not let it go. Do not. And we see Jesus, right? Jesus, again, that's why I'm not God. Like, if I were Jesus, I'd be like, I don't need anybody. Like, what's wrong? I'm God. Like, how can I be friends with you, miserable human? I mean, I know he's human too. But it's like, what can you possibly give me? I'm God. Like, I'm not alone. I'm like the Trinity, right? So, but that's the thing with Jesus. The great thing about Jesus is that he teaches us also authentic friendship. So just read the Bible and see how Jesus informs of friendship. So see the way he is with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. How he weeps over Lazarus. How he lets, I love Martha. Everybody loves Mary, but I love Martha, right? How Martha comes up to her and she's like, if you were here, my friend would not have died, And Jesus is like, excuse me, I'm God. Like, what's your problem? Zap, you're dead. Like, he doesn't do that, right? It's incredible. Like, he sees that and he weeps with her. Like, he understands. He's like, yeah, it hurts. And it's, it could be hard for God. Sometimes when you're with a friend, hard to delay something because it's better for them. What was a bigger thing? Him to heal him, because he had a fever, or him to raise him from the dead, right? So Jesus wanted to bring something even bigger. So it's friendship. He had the 12, right? So his 12 disciples, his 12 BFF. And like any person, yes, he had his 12, but he had his inner 3, right? So Peter, James, and John. And so he had his inner core. And he was grieved, man. When he was alone in Gethsemane, praying, he's like, why are you sleeping? I need you, right? And they were asleep. And so how beautiful to see that even Jesus in his humanity still has that need for friendship, which is a beautiful thing, because one of the things that I want us to think about is because Jesus takes on the humanity, we're also capable of that friendship with God. It isn't just friendship here, but God calls us to be friends. No, China, he doesn't. Well, actually, in John 15:15, he says, I no longer call you servants, instead I call you friends. And so that friendship means that we're capable of reciprocating. Not only give me Jesus, right? But I am capable of giving you too, right? So Jesus makes himself needy for us to give to him. And we may not understand that, but read the Bible again. And notice, was that today? Was that the gospel reading today? I think so. Sorry if it wasn't. But when they were talking about that he goes into this house, right? And was it today? I think so. That that the woman breaks the alabaster jar on his feet. That was today? Okay, good. See? I was like, I have it all confused. So today, she breaks an alabaster jar, this sinner. I want to talk about that for a second. Alabaster jar of perfume on his feet. And everybody's like horrified because he is a friends with sinner, which again, we'll get back to that in a second. They're horrified at that. But Jesus says, I came into your house. I mean, you didn't even wash my feet. Like, you didn't even give me water. So those lack of attention to God, Jesus feels it. When he heals the 10 and only one leper comes back, Jesus is like, where are the other? So it's not like he doesn't care. He feels that lack of response to his love. And so are we the type of friends that Jesus is like, I just did all this. Like, what about me? Like, what about my friendship? Like, I need you too, in that sense, right? In that sense that we could say that Jesus would need something. And again, I don't want to get too theological and philosophical, but it's really interesting to look at the use of philia and agape in the Bible. So with philia, again, when Jesus Christ is described as being friends with sinners, like they accuse him, like you are friends with sinners, Matthew 11:19, philia is a word that's used, this friendship. So he's not just friends, like I'm a Facebook friend, like I sent you $2, good luck for you. No, like he is friends with sinners. It's really interesting. I know that there's different understanding of this, but if you were to read in Greek, at the end in John 21, when Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? Right? He says, like, Peter, do you agape me? And I love Peter. He's like, Jesus, I philia you. That almost is a joke, philia, but anyway. Said it and it sounded funny. So philia, right? So like, do you love me? Do you agape me? And Jesus is like, Jesus, I love you. Like, I philia you. I friendship you. And then he's like, okay, take care of my, sheep. Then again, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter's like, Jesus, I philia. Like, yeah, And then again, just asked him 3 times. And it's interesting because Jesus, the 3rd time, he says, Peter, do you philia me? Like, he comes to his level. Like, I know you're not there yet, but do you love me as this deep, deep friendship? And Peter's like, yes, Lord, I do. And we're going to see that Peter's going to give his life for Jesus. He's going to give this tremendous agape love, but Jesus meets us where we're at. So in all these forms of love, really, it's to push us higher and higher and higher in each level, right? And we can see that Jesus meets us where we're at. So yes, it's an examination of conscience to say, what type of friend am I with other people? But what type of friend am I also to God, like to Jesus, right? How do I love him? How do I encounter him in the ordinary? Now, the other thing I want to talk about too is like friendship with the saints. We like to think of saints like, well, we don't have it here, but we always see statues of saints, and it's so easy to think of them as like marble people, like, as they don't actually move, they don't do anything. But I have found, I'm obsessed with the saints, and so I really am. And so I have found that they're incredible friends, and they're real. I mean, they're more alive now than before, right? Because they're in heaven, like they're with God, and they do amazing things. It's not just miracles, but they prove that they're with you. So you can not only have this friendship with God, obviously, but friendship with the saints. And so how incredible to do that. I always would talk about how I want to run a marathon, like whatever. I've always said that. But recently, I was like, you know what? Let's train. So with a group of friends, we decided we're going to do a 10-week program to run a certain amount of miles. And none of us, we literally have an app. It's called like Couch to 5K because that's how athletic we are, But one of the things that we did was actually really cool is that each week was a saint, or is a saint. We're on week 4. And so each saint like accompanies us throughout. And so it's beautiful because we have what they talk about, like the words. For example, I was sorted into a group of Catherine of Siena, and I've been amazed to know, I knew a little bit about Catherine of Siena, but learning more about her is spectacular. Seeing all these people, how they're having these encounters with the saints are real. Saints are real, and they want to have a relationship with you, an authentic friendship with you. Not only saints were friends with each other, So, you know, you could have Francis and Clara, Ignatius and Francis Xavier, all these great examples. But saints are real friends. And so for just my last moment, I want to give a testimony on how real saints are and how they can teach us about friendship. So just very quickly, some of you may know about a young blessed. Her name is Chiara Badano. If you don't know who she is, if you've ever heard me talk, you're like, yes, we know Chiara Badano. Okay, but she's amazing. She's a young girl, beautiful. And she was just a normal girl. Her parents tried for 11 years to have a kid. Finally, were able to have a daughter. So happy, normal girl, went to school, all these great things. But at 17, she's playing tennis, and the racket falls out of her hand because she has horrible like shoulder pain. She goes to the doctor thinking tendonitis. I'm like, no, it's cancer. You have a year left to live. And so imagine being 17, you know, and having that diagnosis. The beautiful thing is that she took it in, and her motto was, for you, Jesus, if you want this, I want it too. And so all throughout that last year, you could see these amazing pictures of her. There's an awesome documentary that you can even hear her voice, like talking. And she was just joyful. So her nickname, my name is Carmen Briseño, but my nickname is China. Everybody calls me China. Her nickname was Luce, which means light, because she was just so joyful. When she died, so this is not a religious sister. She didn't go on missions. She was just a normal girl who accepted her disease and offered it back up to God. She was so beautiful because her last words to her mom was, remember, she's Italian, so she's like, ciao, you know, be happy because I'm happy. You'd be like, what? Like, you're dying. Like, how can you be happy, right? But no, she had this deep friendship, relationship with God that she knew where she was going. Now, when I say this is that I've always admired this saint, and I think she's spectacular, but when I knew her friendship was when my best friend, who was only 29 years old, was diagnosed with horrible terminal cancer. And so colon cancer at 28, 29 is super aggressive, was for her. She had several families who have died of colon cancer. Now, the thing is, before she gets diagnosed with cancer, 2 years before, she did an amazing retreat called Cursillo. Part of Cursillo at the end is you're invited to join a small faith community and to get like a saint or an advocation of the Virgin to be your group. So we chose Luce before we even knew anything about Pammy's cancer, like 2 years before. But here's the thing. We always prayed to Luce because we loved her. But when Pammy got diagnosed with colon cancer, we're like, wow, Chiara really chose us, like really chose Pammy. Turns out that we freaked out because we were watching the documentary. Pammy and Chiara were diagnosed on the same day, March 14th. And so what was incredible is that we were praying through her intercession and all these things, and Pammy got her first surgery, and we were worried because we're like, we don't know if after this she's going to have to get chemo and all that stuff. And so her surgery was successful. We're so happy. We're like, thank you, Chiara, yay. So about 4 or 5 months later, they're like, oh, there's a spot on your liver. I was like, oh, what's that? So she goes back, and I'll remember this. This is how crazy I am. So I'm calling Pammy. I'm like, what did they say? But Pammy's not calling me back. And so I get a knock on the door, and it's Pammy. And if you've ever met her, through this disease and diagnosis, she just had incredible joy, which I think is a gift from God. She opened the door, and she's like, it's cancer. Like, again, it went to her liver. So now it's stage 4. You know what my reaction was? This is how horrible. Like, I love Chiara. I literally just blurted out of my mouth, Chiara, you're fired, right? Because I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, you were supposed to help her. Like, no. And then she had to go through chemo. But what was beautiful was to see how Pammy took that. So every chemo that she went on, she would offer it for somebody. When they did her surgery, when they did her liver surgery, they put staples. And it's funny because she was like, do you want to see my staples? I'm like, that's disgusting. Yes, I do. You know? And it was like horrible. It's like one of those things that you're like, you know. But it's incredible to see how close Chiara was to her, because I could hear Pammy always saying, if you want this, Jesus, I want it too. If you want this, Jesus, I want it too. And so when we were talking about her staples, that was a time of all the horrible scandals in the church with Conor McCarrick and all that stuff. So one of the amazing things with Pammy, she's like, I'm going to offer each staple for one of these horrible priests that are doing all these things. Love your enemies, right? And so just incredible to see how Pammy was doing. Now, the thing is, a year before, I'm telling you all this so that you could see just how amazing the saints are. A year before she even was diagnosed with cancer, we already had a trip to go to Italy, okay? And once Pammy goes through all this stuff, we're like, is she going to even be able to go? Turns out that right after her surgery, the trip was 6 weeks out, which was exactly the time of recovery she had from her liver. When I'm looking at where we're traveling, I'm like, oh my gosh, Father, because I was with my priest, I was like, you're not going to believe this. Like, going to Turin Saselo, where Chiara's from, is just an hour away. Like, we have to go. Everybody on this bus have been praying for Pam. We have to go visit Chiara because, again, she's our friend. And wouldn't you say thank you to your friend if they helped, like, with the incredible recovery? So it turns out that we actually get to go to Saselo. Guess what day it was? October 29th, the Feast of Chiara. Okay, are these things coincidences? I do not think so. I think it's authentic heavenly friendship. So we're going to go to the church where Chiara is, and we're so excited, like, oh my gosh, we're going to go pray where Chiara prayed. So we're there, and we're so excited. But what happens when we're there? The doors open, and her mom comes in, Chiara's mom. And Chiara's best friend was there. And I'm such a stalker creeper that when I see them, I've seen the documentary 20 times, I'm like, Mama la Chiara, like Kika. And they're like, who are you, right? Like, I don't know who you are. I'm like, no, documentary. Like, I've seen it. I know all about you. And then everybody's crying because, like, a saint's mom. Like, you know what I mean? All throughout the Mass, they were sitting together. Chiara's mom and Pammy are holding hands throughout the Mass. Okay? So can you imagine? And I'm like, I'm not a crier, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like just looking at them, I couldn't believe it. And then after the Mass, Chiara's mom was like, would you like to come to our house and see where Chiara lived? I'm like, let me think about that. Oh, of course, right? And so I'm with my dad, and I'm like, you film everything. And so like we're going in, and I can't believe this. And it was so amazing because Chiara's mom brought her into the house. And like I said, we've seen the documentary 1,000 times, into the room where Chiara's bed was, where she offered her life up to God. And her mom was there just like half an hour telling us about all these amazing things about Chiara and all these great stuff. And her mom said, turns out 2 days before, her husband had died, the mom. And we're like, well then, right? But what's incredible is that the mom said, you know, today I was just feeling sad. It was a rainy day. And she said, I was just telling Chiara, send me a caricia. A caricia is like, just send me like a sign of affection. And she's like, you guys, like you being here is Chiara's like sign of affection to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're our affection. Like we were just the most incredible thing. So saints are real. Saints can have you and help you have an amazing friendship with God. Where would I be without Saint Therese, without John Paul II, without Jose Maria Escrivá, who teaches me how to, well, tries to teach me, I'm kind of stubborn, right? To live holiness in daily life. I mean, it's literally on my phone. I don't have my phone with me, but my wallpaper is Jose Maria Escrivá, and there's this saying that says, a saint is a sinner that keeps on trying. I'm like, then I can be a saint, right? Because I'll just keep on trying. You know, where would I be without John Paul II, without Mother Teresa? And they're not anonymous figures like, you know, I don't know, soccer players are like, wow, I admire you, but I have no intent. No. These are real people that come to you daily life. I could spend the next, 1,000 hours talking about the saints. But just to review, again, of what we learned today, is just thinking about, again, those 4 types of love and that Storge love that begins with that natural kinship that we already have with family and friends, but it calls us beyond that, right? It calls us beyond that. If you have that natural affinity with your sisters, with your parents, with your siblings, that's fantastic, but go beyond that. If you don't, because whatever family situation you have, you're still called to love. You still belong. You still have a family. You have a father who loves you. You have a mother who loves you, right? You have a church that welcomes you. You're part of that family. And so what a beautiful thing. And then just going back and reviewing Philia and reviewing, who are my friends? Who are my real friends? Are my friendship based on utility? Is it based on pleasure? Is it based on wanting virtue? And just think about this. I want to leave you with this image. When we talk about this friendship, it's not only friendship with others, but it's this friendship with God. He wants our friendship, right? He wants that. And what a beautiful thing that is. And as you think about your friends, as you think about your significant other, you know, I don't rock climb, but I think it's cool. And so I've seen people, I don't know what it's called. I'm going to call it tandem climbing. That's not the right term. But have you ever seen like when people climb and they have like ropes that are connected to each other? You know what I mean? I mean, that's the image of friendship, right? The image of friendship of like, we're going to the heights, like for Giorgio Frassati would say, like towards the heights, verso lo alto. We're going to the heights, and who's with you? Who is helping you climb up? Are you just with people that you're climbing and are just like, you know, like dragging you down? And it's nice to bring people up, to help them up, but you need that support to walk, and you're like, no, we're all looking the same direction. We're all heading this way. Those are your friends. The ones who challenge you, the ones who make you better, the ones who you can be like, man, I was like this, and now because of our friendship, because of what God is doing in you and in me, I'm becoming a better person. So what a great thing. All right, I've talked for a long time. But also remember, by the way, that saints are your friends. They want to be your friends. I'm sure that they're in heaven like, but ask me for a favor, right? Like they want that relationship with you. So why don't we just end in a quick prayer, and then I know we're going to do a transition. And then if you have any questions by this lovely fireplace, I'm glad to talk about it and answer that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the gift of love, how you always call us out of yourself. Help us to love, appreciate, and sacrifice for our family. Help us to be authentic friends to others and to you, and to be open to the friendship with the saints. Help us to remember that we belong to you. We're not orphans. We have a family who loves us. We have a church who loves us, and we belong. We pray that our life and the way that we love could give glory to you. So let's pray together. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you.
So we're just gonna let that simmer for a few moments, and we'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes for a Q&A. And go ahead and just drop your questions in the chat, and we'll be with you shortly. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few questions here. First of all, I was very captivated when you started talking about the saints. I was actually having a conversation with someone about loneliness a few months ago. And my one friend, she was just like striving towards God. And I remember in your talk you were saying about just when we look at Jesus and we run towards him, our friends are the ones who are on our right or our left. But sometimes, like, we look to our right and our left and we don't see anyone.
Yeah.
And so I was talking with her about this, and she was saying that actually in college, she discovered friendship with the saints because at the time she didn't have that with people here. So I was just wondering, for someone that doesn't pray to the saints yet or really think about that all that much, any tips on how to develop those friendships with our heavenly friends?
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, obviously you can't love what you don't know. And so I think for me, it was great to like really coming to understand who are they. So for example, one time I was going to like Catholic News Agency or a story showed up and I heard about Kiara. I'm like, who's this girl? And I think in our heads, we think that the saints were like, I don't know, 1400 years ago. But there's so many saints that are happening, like that are coming up. So even if you're like, what's this about? Literally write young adult saints. And like, for example, if you were to hear about Pier Giorgio Fossati, and if you're into exercise or athleticism, like you see these people and it's incredible. Or Chiara Petrillo, she's one that's going to be blessed soon. So there's all these young people who died just a few years ago that you begin to learn about their life. So I would just start out there. Like sometimes just say, okay, saints who were young, saints who were married, saints who were single, saints who struggled with blah, blah, blah. For example, I love Therese, but not a lot of people know about her sister Leonie. Her sister Leonie is the only other one out of all of her saints, of all of her sisters, who are basically saints, whose cause is open. And she struggled with mental illness. She struggled with loneliness. So she went through what a lot of us are going through. So I think whether it's looking for specific saints or looking for saints who struggle with this, and all of a sudden you realize their life has something to teach me. So Google is a great resource too. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. You don't love what you don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have another example or story of like when you've seen a saint working very clearly in your life?
Oh, yeah, like 1,000, yeah. So this is going to sound like bragging, but I don't mean it. Many times. But I've been very fortunate to go to places where the saints have been buried or lived. So last summer I was able to go to Lisieux, right, to see Therese. And it was just amazing seeing how something that I was struggling with, it was precisely at that moment where it was like one of her words that was in the comment what they showed. It was like, that is exactly an answer to my prayer. And Therese is one of those, I mean, Therese gets used a lot, and I don't mean in a bad way. People are like, send me a flower, right? And so, but she has done that to me in crucial moments. Recently just happened. I was like, I shouldn't ask, but you know what? If you're not busy. And it was amazing because it was the last day, the last moment. I wasn't even thinking about it. And my friend, who never does this, left me a flower just on my table. And I was like, Therese, thank you. You know, and it's not because the saints don't love me. They didn't send me a flower. They didn't send me a dollar bill. Like, it's not that, but it's all these moments. I've seen that when my sister got horribly sick, that she had a brain aneurysm and she almost died, it was our Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, who's the world patron of the sick. So it's like, it's not a coincidence, you know, that like these days, these important days, like the Virgin was specifically there, you know? And so all these little moments, or I may be thinking about Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, and somebody's like, oh, have you heard of this saint? Here's a medal. And I'm like, oh, creepy, you know? But if you have eyes to see, you will see. So yeah, I mean, I can go on and on, but.
That's so beautiful and inspiring.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Of course.
We have a question from Christina. How do you know if your friendship is a genuinely virtuous one?
Great. So thank you, Christina, for your question. So I guess know the virtues, right? So that's number one. And so you need to ask yourself, okay, is this friendship we talked about based on utility? Is it based on pleasure? It doesn't mean that you can't have pleasure with your friends. Like we like going out and running, and that's great. But are you growing as a person? Like, is this person speaking truth in your life? So for example, how do I know if it's virtuous? If I know that I'm struggling with a fault, is this person able to come into my life and say, hey, You know what I mean? Like, I know you're struggling with this, but let's walk this way. Or do you feel comfortable to say with your friend, okay, I've noticed you struggling with this. Like, how can I help you with that? Right? Or if it's a, if it's a relationship, like, oh, my boyfriend, a good question is, if we don't do A, B, and C, right, is the love really there? Does he really want what is best for me, even though that means that this pleasure, this utility is not there? So for example, virtues, when we're together, are we better? Like, are we better because we're together? Have I grown or have I grown in vice? So I think that's important to see.
Wow, and I love that test of friendship right there. Like, if you know that you're struggling with something or something in your life isn't good and it's pretty obvious, okay, who are the friends that are actually going to tell you that?
Yeah.
That's great.
And who are the friends, sorry to cut, who are the friends that you can say, help me with this? Like, you know what I mean? I need you to keep me accountable, help me with this, that you're not ashamed to show your faults to. I think that's important too.
Yes, that place of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. A question from Charlie. He says, friendship with God can seem hard sometimes, other than prayer, because, well, obviously. How else can we come to understand and build that friendship with God?
Okay, great. So obviously friendship is built spending time, right, with another person. So a good thing to ask yourself is like, how much time am I spending with God? And so here's prayer. Prayer is a relationship with God. So I think we think, am I saying vocal prayers? I mean, that's nice, but that's not the extent of prayer. So I am very much like nature loving. And so when I go outside for a run or when I go outside and I see something beautiful, I'm like, God, I'm going to spend this time with you. Just be with me. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to do anything, but just be with me. And then you can, in that moment, you can recognize God in that moment. You can recognize God in the beauty that he's created. Or just stopping by the chapel 5 minutes, silent. Like, you know what I mean? Or just throughout the day, seeing God and your friends and all that. So I think it's with time and awareness, right? Like awareness. Like, am I aware of God in my life? And how do I see that? And his relationship with you is going to be totally different with God's relationship with me. Don't compare yourself too, because like you can go to the chapel and like, oh my gosh, like Nicole is so holy. Look how she prays. But no, that's her relationship with God. Mine is different. And so what does that look like? And let that be your own and discover that if you don't know what that looks like.
Yes. And I think it's so important to emphasize that uniqueness.
Yes.
And that's something that I've thought a lot about too. Like, oh, I want to be special, I want to be unique, but we want that with our friendship with God.
Yeah.
And so I think to really embrace that and to not compare.
Yeah.
Is just so important. So thank you.
Yeah. No, of course.
That again. Okay. Another question from Jane. Any advice about how to have difficult conversations with our friends?
Yes. Thank you, Jane. And that means that you're a good friend. If you have to have a difficult conversation, it means you're a good friend. Number one, you're not allowed to talk to people about difficult things if you don't love them. So obviously, if they're your friends, you love them. But you don't go to correct a person if there isn't love in your heart. So that's number one. And love is to want what is best for them, right? So that's number one. Number two, pray before it. Like pray beforehand. Pray, I know this is going to sound weird maybe for some people, but whenever I have to have a difficult conversation, I think number one, okay, is this a pride thing? Is it because of this? Or is this is for their good? And then, also like I pray, like, hey, guardian angel, like also open their heart to what I'm going to say. And then imagine that it's you. How would you want to be corrected? Like, how would you want somebody, if they're going to bring this up, how would you receive that? The gospel talks about the seed that falls to the ground and sometimes it doesn't bear fruit, right? Like the bird comes, the other ones grew in wheat and the rocks. Well, the only one that gave fruit is because the soil was ready. So how is your friendship with that friend? Like, have you invested enough so that when you speak to them in love, they actually know you care? So they're going to receive what you're going to say? Or are you just going to be like, I need to tell you and I'm your moral police? Like, so you have to see, like, have I invested with this person to speak truth where they're going to receive it, or is it just going to be thrown and taken away? So have love in your heart, pray for it, and then ask yourself, how would I want to receive it? And then have I invested where this person can actually hear what I'm going to say?
Right. And that's a lot of forward thinking.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's true. If it's difficult, then it's worth the time, right?
Right, definitely. It deserves that. We have a question from Daniel. How should we approach cultivating a virtuous friendship with people who want it but are difficult to talk to?
Yeah. I wonder what the situation is that they're difficult to talk to. I think also I've noticed people, it's good, this is a whole nother talk, but know people's love languages. So I've noticed with other people, I'm very much quality time, but that's how I receive love. But maybe somebody else, it's service. So I remember with a friend, it was like difficult to talk to them or feel like loved by them and stuff like that. But I realized, okay, if I'm not like in your face all the time, you know, that's not how you're going to receive love. So maybe I'd be like, okay, like when I serve you, you can see what that is. My sister was just telling me with her daughter, she's always with her, but she just wanted like some masks and she gave it to her. And to this day, like 3 days later, she's like, thank you, Mom, thank you. So my sister can hug her, kiss her and all that. And she's like, yeah, whatever, get away. But this gift, she received better. So I think if people are difficult, is it you that feel awkward or is there another way to approach that person? So not thinking about like me, but thinking about them. How are they with other people? How do they relate? And how can I like approach that in that way? You know what I mean?
Wow, yes. And I love this theme of always putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Like with the difficult conversations one, thinking, okay, well, how are they going to receive this? Or talking to people that we don't necessarily connect with right away. Oh, well, what's their love language? Like really putting yourself in their shoes. I think that's awesome. All right, so one more question. You mentioned calling people out if we see something that clearly needs to be worked on, or if it's one of our friends, hey, this girl or guy isn't good for you in this relationship, just sharing the truth in that way. But is it also loving them if we don't tell them and allow them to figure it out for themselves?
Okay, so that's a nice way of saying that. But I think if you're enabling, then no. So what I mean by that is if you realize, depends on the situation, like I realize this person's being lazy all the time and this is like wrong for them, but I keep on picking up and doing something like that and I'm enabling them, you know, then yeah, let them figure it out when they have to do that. But if you can clearly see that this is going to be a disaster, then I want to be a person that I can do it. Now, you're free to smack against the wall and that's that. But so I think there's a discernment. Like, is this actually going to help them or is this enabling them? So if it's enabling them, then no, you don't step in and you don't do that. But if it's actually like, no, because I'm not in that situation, I'm able to think more clearly, I'm in a position to help you. Like if you're drowning and I'm on solid ground, I'm in a position to help you. But if we're both drowning, you know, we need to figure something else out. So I think there's a discernment there too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's also cool, even just listening to things like this, when we're in a sticky situation with a friend, to ask for other people's advice too. People that have gone through those things before us. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Of course. Today. This was lovely. And we will see you next week.
Wonderful.
And we're going to have just some closing announcements from John. A little switcheroo.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this one over here. Oh, changing it up a bit. All right, guys. Oopsie. All right. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, just to keep up. Josh is running away. But yeah, just to catch up with all of our events. Also, want to know more info on Catholic Patriot events? Follow and like us on Facebook. That's where we're going to be posting most of our events, and you'll be able to get all our links through there as well. Reminder that we have a Zoom discussion right after this. The Zoom link will be dropping right now. So, yeah. Also, remember that tonight at 9 we'll be having our comp line. So I'd love to see you all there. And also join us next week for our next talk, Unleashing Eros, by our very own Nero and Sarah. Other than that, have a wonderful evening. See ya.